Exposing the scale of Russia's relentless air campaign in Ukraine, this is a story you need to hear if you care about the future of modern warfare. In the past week, Russia has dramatically escalated its aerial assault, launching record-breaking waves of drones and missiles that have pushed Ukraine's defenses to the brink. With hundreds of drones and advanced missiles targeting cities and civilians, the stakes have never been higher. This renewed offensive is not just about territory. It's about testing the limits of Ukraine's resilience, the effectiveness of Western-supplied air defense systems, and the psychological endurance of an entire nation. In this video, we break down the latest attacks, the technology behind the defenses, and what this means for the ongoing conflict. The night sky over Ukraine once again became a battleground. In the early hours of June 10, 2025, air raid sirens blared across the country, a familiar and terrifying sound for millions. Russia unleashed a massive barrage of drones and missiles, continuing a recent escalation in its aerial campaign. This assault was not random. It was a coordinated effort aimed at overwhelming Ukraine's defenses and striking deep into its territory. The sheer scale of the attack was staggering, with reports indicating that 315 drones and 7 missiles were launched from various directions. This tactic is designed to saturate air defense systems, making it incredibly difficult to intercept every single threat that fills the air with the menacing buzz of engines and the roar of rockets. The primary target of this overwhelming assault appeared to be the capital city, Kiev. Residents were forced into shelters as explosions echoed through the darkness, a grim reminder that even after years of conflict, the heart of the nation remains under constant threat. Ukraine's air force, bolstered by Western-supplied systems, mounted a formidable defense against the onslaught. They worked tirelessly through the night, launching their own interceptor missiles to protect sleeping cities below. Their efforts were remarkably successful. According to official statements from the Ukrainian military, their air defense units managed to shoot down an astounding 284 of the incoming drones, as well as all 7 missiles that were fired. This level of success highlights the critical importance of sophisticated air defense technology in this modern war. Systems like the US-made Patriot have proven invaluable, capable of stopping even advanced Russian weaponry, including hypersonic missiles, as seen in previous attacks. However, the constant barrage takes a toll not only on the military's resources, but also on the spirit of the people who live under this persistent threat. Each siren, each explosion, is a fresh wave of trauma. The psychological pressure of these nightly attacks is a weapon in itself, aimed at breaking the will of the Ukrainian people and disrupting any sense of normalcy or safety, even far from the front lines. The attack on June 10th was part of a disturbing trend. It came directly after what was described as a record-breaking Russian drone assault just a day earlier, which involved nearly 500 drones targeting regions across the country. This pattern suggests a Russian strategy focused on depleting Ukraine's air defense stockpiles and identifying weaknesses in its coverage. By launching these massive, back-to-back waves, Russia tests the limits of Ukraine's capabilities. It forces difficult decisions about which areas to protect and stretches resources thin. For the defenders on the ground, every night is a high-stakes battle where success is measured by the number of lives and homes saved from destruction. Despite the heroic efforts of Ukraine's air defenders, no defense is perfect. When hundreds of drones fill the sky, some inevitably slip through the net, and the consequences are devastating for those on the ground. In the southern port city of Odessa, a critical hub for grain exports, falling debris from an intercepted drone or a direct hit caused significant damage. The attack tragically claimed the lives of at least 2 people and left several others injured. First responders rushed to the scene, navigating rubble and fire to search for survivors. Such incidents underscore the brutal reality that even a successful interception can have lethal outcomes, as wreckage plummets into residential areas, turning a military victory into a civilian tragedy. Further east, the city of Kharkiv and its surrounding region, which have endured some of the most intense fighting of the war, were also targeted. Russian strikes hit 8 different settlements in the area, injuring at least 4 people. Kharkiv's proximity to the Russian border makes it exceptionally vulnerable to a wide range of attacks, from artillery to drones. The constant shelling has inflicted deep scars on the city and its inhabitants, who have shown incredible resilience in the face of near-daily assaults. The damage to infrastructure and homes adds to the immense challenge of rebuilding and sustaining life in a region that remains firmly on the front line of the conflict. The human cost of these attacks extends far beyond the immediate casualties. For every person killed or injured, there are countless others whose lives are irrevocably altered, families are displaced, homes are destroyed, and the psychological toll is immeasurable. The fear and uncertainty become a part of daily existence. Parents must explain to their children why they have to sleep in basements or subway stations. The routine of life is shattered, replaced by a constant state of alert. These strikes are not just military actions, they are attacks on the very fabric of Ukrainian society, aimed at demoralizing the population and making normal life impossible. The attacks on Kyiv, Odessa, and Kharkiv represent a strategic triangle of pressure. Kyiv, the political and symbolic center, Odessa, the economic lifeline to the Black Sea, and Kharkiv, the key city in the embattled east. By striking all three, Russia demonstrates its reach and its intent to inflict pain across the entire country. It sends a clear message that no part of Ukraine is safe. For the people living in these cities, each dawn that breaks after a night of attacks brings a mix of relief and dread. They survived another night, but they know the threat remains, and the sirens will almost certainly sound again. Ukraine is not merely defending, it is actively striking back. In a significant show of its growing long-range capabilities, Ukraine has been launching its own drone attacks deep inside Russian territory. In response to the overnight assault, Ukrainian drones targeted areas near major Russian cities. These retaliatory strikes prompted the temporary shutdown of all airports serving Moscow and St. Petersburg, causing disruptions and bringing the reality of the war home to Russian citizens. Russia's defense ministry claimed it had downed over 100 Ukrainian drones over several regions, but the fact that they reached these key metropolitan areas is a strategic success for Ukraine, demonstrating a new phase of the conflict. This war is increasingly being defined by technology and the alliances that supply it. A worrying development for Ukraine and its allies is the deepening military cooperation between Russia and North Korea. According to Ukrainian intelligence, North Korea is not only continuing to supply Russia with vast quantities of artillery shells and other weapons, but is also receiving Russian assistance to establish its own production facilities for advanced kamikaze drones. This partnership provides Moscow with a crucial lifeline to sustain its war machine, bypassing Western sanctions and replenishing its arsenals with weapons from a fellow pariah state. The presence of North Korean troops in Russia, confirmed in April, further cements this dangerous alliance. President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has watched these developments with growing alarm, especially as support from key partners shows signs of wavering. He has issued a direct and urgent appeal to the United States, asking it to use its immense global influence and power to force Russia into peace. This plea comes at a critical time. The new U.S. administration has expressed skepticism about the level of continued aid, even redirecting some anti-drone missiles originally meant for Ukraine. This shift in policy from Kiev's most powerful backer creates uncertainty and puts immense pressure on Ukrainian forces who rely on a steady flow of Western weapons to continue their fight for survival. Zelensky's call for peace is not a call for surrender. It is a recognition that a military victory may be protracted and incredibly costly, and that diplomatic pressure, led by the United States, is essential to bringing the conflict to a just end. He is urging Washington to leverage its economic and political might to compel Moscow to the negotiating table in good faith. However, with Russia strengthening its ties with countries like North Korea and maintaining its offensive on the battlefield, the path to a peaceful resolution appears fraught with obstacles. Ukraine finds itself fighting a war on two fronts, one with drones and missiles, and another for the sustained attention and support of its international partners. In the midst of the escalating drone warfare and geopolitical maneuvering, the desire for peace remains a powerful, unifying force for ordinary people on both sides of the conflict. For Ukrainians, peace means the end of daily terror, the return of loved ones from the front, and the chance to rebuild their shattered country. It is the hope that drives their fierce resistance, the dream of a future where children do not have to learn the sound of air raid sirens. This yearning is not a sign of weakness but a testament to their humanity. They fight so that one day they will no longer have to, longing for a simple return to normalcy, security, and sovereignty within their own borders. This hope for an end to the bloodshed is not confined to Ukraine. While the Russian state pursues its military objectives, many of its citizens quietly harbor a desire for the conflict to cease. The war has brought economic hardship, international isolation, and personal loss to countless Russian families. The drone attacks on Moscow and other cities, though limited in comparison to the devastation in Ukraine, have cracked the Kremlin's narrative that the conflict is a distant special military operation. The reality of war is now arriving in their skies, disrupting daily life and planting seeds of anxiety about what the future holds for them and their country. Yet, the path to peace is blocked by the harsh realities of the battlefield. Russia continues to push its offensive, opening new fronts and claiming advances, while Ukraine vows to fight until all of its territory is liberated. Recent diplomatic efforts, such as the peace talks in Jeddah, have yet to produce a breakthrough, though small successes like a recent prisoner exchange offer a faint glimmer of hope. In this exchange, young captives from both sides were returned home, a rare moment of direct cooperation and a reminder that even in the darkest of times, channels for dialogue and compassion can be found, providing a small but significant relief to the families involved. As of today, June 10, 2025, the conflict rages on, a relentless cycle of attack and counterattack. President Zelensky's call for the U.S. to help force a peace settlement hangs in the air, a plea for a powerful intervention to break the deadly stalemate. While governments and armies plan their next moves, the people of the region continue to endure. They hold on to hope as their most resilient shield against the despair of a war that has already lasted far too long. The world watches, hoping that their pleas for peace will finally be heard above the sound of drones and explosions. Gap 2S. As the war stretches into another year, the true cost is measured not in territory gained or lost, but in the daily lives forever altered by violence. Across Ukraine, families navigate a landscape scarred by bombed-out buildings and shattered infrastructure. In small villages, children attend makeshift schools in basements, their lessons interrupted by the distant rumble of artillery. Volunteers distribute aid in battered cities, sharing what little they have with neighbors and strangers alike. Gap 2S. On the Russian side, stories emerge of conscripts and their families grappling with uncertainty and fear. Mothers wait for news from the front, clutching faded photographs of sons and husbands. Some quietly protest, risking arrest to demand answers, while others struggle to make sense of loved ones lost to a conflict they did not choose. Gap 2S. Humanitarian corridors, when they open, offer a brief respite, families reunite, and wounded civilians receive vital care. Yet, the scars of war linger long after the guns fall silent. Trauma, displacement, and grief ripple through communities, shaping a generation's outlook on the future. Gap 2S. In the midst of this suffering, acts of kindness and resilience shine through. A Ukrainian medic shares her story of saving lives under fire. A Russian journalist, risking censorship, documents the realities of war for the world to see. Across borders, ordinary people send messages of support, bridging divides with empathy and hope. Gap 2S. These stories remind us that behind every headline and battlefield report are millions of human lives, each with their own dreams, fears, and longing for peace. As the conflict grinds on, their courage and compassion endure, quiet testaments to the human spirit in the face of relentless adversity. As the conflict persists, its reverberations are felt far beyond the borders of Ukraine and Russia. Leaders from around the world issue statements of condemnation or calls for restraint, their words echoing through international forums and news cycles. Across Europe, governments ramp up support for refugees, while debates intensify over sanctions, energy security, and military aid. In the United States, policymakers grapple with balancing strategic interests and humanitarian concerns, as public opinion shifts with each new headline. Meanwhile, global markets react to every escalation. Energy prices fluctuate, supply chains strain, and ordinary citizens everywhere feel the economic impact at the pump and in grocery stores. In neighboring countries, communities brace for potential spillover, reinforcing borders and preparing for an uncertain future. On social media, the conflict unfolds in real time. Images of destruction, hope, and defiance spread rapidly, fueling both solidarity and misinformation. International organizations coordinate relief efforts, while activists and celebrities amplify calls for peace and accountability. Yet, amid the noise, a sense of fatigue sets in for many observers. As the headlines grow familiar, there is a risk that the world's attention will drift, even as the crisis endures. Still, moments of unity and compassion break through. Fundraisers, vigils, and grassroots campaigns reminding us that, even from afar, the global community remains connected to the fate of those living through war. The world watches, reacts, and hopes for a resolution. But as the conflict enters another chapter, its outcomes will shape not only the region, but the contours of global politics, security, and humanity for years to come. As the dust settles over yet another day of conflict, the future remains shrouded in uncertainty. Negotiations flicker on and off, overshadowed by the thunder of artillery and the shifting lines on the map. For millions, the question is not just when peace will come, but what will be left to rebuild when it does. In classrooms, children draw pictures of homes they may never see again. In hospitals, doctors work tirelessly, fueled by hope that tomorrow will bring fewer wounded. Families separated by borders and battle lines cling to messages from loved ones, their lives paused by forces beyond their control. Amidst the rubble, seeds of resilience take root. Local volunteers organize food drives and shelter, while engineers and artists imagine new ways to reconnect shattered communities. Stories of small acts of kindness, a shared loaf of bread, a rescued pet, a song sung in a subway station, become beacons in the darkness. The world wonders, what will the next chapter hold? Will new leaders rise to bridge divides, or will cycles of violence and distrust persist? As the conflict tests the limits of endurance, it also reveals the strength of the human spirit. Change, if it comes, will be hard-won, but in the faces of survivors and the hands of those who rebuild, there is a quiet determination. Even as uncertainty looms, hope endures, not just for an end to war, but for a future where peace, however fragile, can finally take root. As the world continues to witness the relentless unfolding of this conflict, the lessons emerging from the ashes are too profound to ignore. History warns us that wars may end, but their consequences linger, etched into landscapes and lives for generations to come. Across continents, policymakers, educators, and ordinary citizens are called to reflect on the deeper causes of war and the fragile mechanisms of peace. International organizations convene emergency summits, striving to learn from failures and successes alike. Scholars and journalists document every detail, ensuring that the truth endures beyond the fog of propaganda. In classrooms far from the front lines, teachers use today's headlines to spark conversations about empathy, diplomacy, and the cost of indifference. Meanwhile, humanitarian groups analyze the gaps exposed by the crisis, how aid can move faster, how refugees can be welcomed with dignity, and how communities can be rebuilt stronger and more inclusive than before. The digital age amplifies voices from the ground, reminding the world that behind every statistic is a story, a family, a future interrupted but not erased. As we look back and move forward, the conflict becomes more than a geopolitical struggle. It becomes a stark reminder of our shared responsibility. The choices made today, by leaders and by each of us, will shape not only the destiny of Ukraine and Russia, but the moral compass of the world community. In the end, the greatest lesson may be this, that peace is not merely the absence of war, but the presence of justice, compassion, and the unwavering will to build bridges even where only ruins remain. Even as the scars of conflict remain etched across cities and countryside, the story does not end in devastation. In the shadow of shattered buildings and abandoned homes, seeds of resilience begin to sprout. Communities gather to clear debris, paint over bullet-riddled walls, and plant gardens in once barren courtyards. Volunteers, young and old, distribute food, rebuild playgrounds, and reopen schools, forging a new sense of unity born from shared hardship. Local entrepreneurs launch small businesses, determined to restore life and livelihoods. Artists transform the ruins into canvases, painting murals of hope and remembrance that draw visitors and inspire neighbors. Across Ukraine and neighboring countries, networks of support form, donations, counseling, and job training offered to those most affected. Technology plays a pivotal role. Digital platforms connect displaced families with resources and help volunteers coordinate rebuilding efforts. International partners, witnessing the determination on the ground, step up with funding and expertise. Engineers design innovative, sustainable housing. Educators create trauma-informed curricula to help children heal. In town squares, music and laughter return, tentative but resilient, as people gather to celebrate milestones and support one another. These stories of recovery remind us that resilience is more than endurance. It is the courage to imagine and create a future beyond loss. Each act of rebuilding, no matter how small, is a testament to the human spirit's capacity for renewal. And as the world watches, inspired by these acts of hope and determination, a new chapter begins. One where the legacy of conflict is not just destruction, but the unbreakable will to rise again. Yet, even as communities rebuild and hope takes root, the reality of ongoing conflict continues to cast a long shadow. Air raid sirens still punctuate daily life, and families keep emergency bags by the door, never certain when the next attack might come. Schools and hospitals operate with contingency plans, ever vigilant for sudden danger. For many, the line between normalcy and crisis blurs. Children play in the streets, but always within earshot of shelter. Businesses reopen, but with windows boarded and contingency plans in place. Across the border regions, military convoys rumble through towns and checkpoints remain a fixture of the landscape. Displaced families, unable to return home, navigate the challenges of temporary housing and uncertain futures. Local leaders work tirelessly, balancing the demands of rebuilding with the need to protect their citizens. The psychological toll is profound. Counselors and support groups offer solace, but anxiety lingers. Trauma is not easily erased. Even moments of joy are often tinged with caution, as the unpredictability of conflict shapes every decision. International aid continues to flow, but resources are stretched thin, and the world's attention is divided by other crises. Still, communities persist, adapting to a new normal defined by both resilience and vigilance. In this fragile landscape, hope and fear coexist. Each day, Ukrainians and their neighbors must navigate the complexities of rebuilding while living under the persistent threat of renewed violence. The journey forward is uncertain, but the determination to endure remains unbroken. As the story unfolds, these moments of uncertainty serve as a powerful reminder. Peace is not just the absence of war, but the ongoing effort to create safety, stability, and dignity amid the unknown.